Welcome to another edition of Off the Record, the Daily Record's new football podcast that goes beyond the headlines to tell you the stories behind the stories from the people who were at the heart of them. I'm David McCarthy and I'm joined as always by my friend and colleague Keith Jackson as we look back to 25 years ago this summer. We're going back in time to France 98, which was a quarter of a century on, remains the last time Scotland played at a World Cup. And I'm delighted to say we're joined today by the man who led Craig Brown's men in that campaign, our very own captain and braveheart, Colin Hendry, who not only won 51 caps and in a glittering career won the English League title with Blackburn Rovers in 1995 before heading north and claiming a cherished treble with Rangers under Dick Advocaat in 1999. Colin, it's great to have you with us and thanks very much for appearing in the show.
Pleasure, guys. Good to be here. Looking forward to it.
25 years ago. I mean, it feels like a different lifetime.
Nah, it's mental. That's crazy. I mean, when you're talking, a lot of people remember me from the World Cup when I'm in England. I think everybody really remembers me from playing for Blackburn and winning the league. But when I'm back in Scotland, it's the World Cup or Rangers sort of thing with the treble. Of course, Euro 96 gets a mention wherever I'm at for obvious reasons. But I probably saved Gazza that day. But here you go. Saved his career, I should say.
Absolutely. That's funny because is that the thing that when, if you're in a service station or something like that, you're filling up your motor, that people will still shout to you, Gazza and stuff like that? Is that what happens?
Well, to be fair, Davey, as a defender, we're gauged by our mistakes. That's, we can do, 10 a dozen good things during the course of a game that you're happy with. And then you make one mistake, that's what everybody remembers. Whereas, on another hand, if you're a striker or you're an offensive player, you could have, 10, 12 chances or even 6 chances, score 1 goal, 2 goals, you're the hero. So it's a complete opposite from being an offensive player to a defensive player. But it's how it is. And I think that, I'm not so sure about these days, but certainly back in my day, when you had to... when in a defending position, you had to be mentally strong as well as, because criticisms they're there to be levelled at you all the time if you make mistakes. But yeah, no, a lot of people do remind me of the goal in '96, and I don't. Well, it's not really. There's only one man responsible for that, and that was Yuri Geller.
Absolutely, I know.
Because he moved the ball before Gary, or he took responsibility because before Gary took the penalty, we missed the pen. I mean, if it scored a pen, then listen, we were good value on the day. We were decent. We were good value on the day. I mean, we dug in against Holland in the first game, and we dug in against England in the second game, and I thought we were at least good value for a point, which would have taken us into the last game against Switzerland, which we won. But not to be.
Colin, we were sitting in the press box that day, and I'm telling you now, I still believe it. I think I turned to Davey and said, we score this penalty, we're going to win this. Yeah. Because I felt at that point we were so far on top of that game. It was. I mean, it's the most sickening change of momentum I've ever had to sit and witness. And we try to be as impartial as we can be when we're sitting watching Scotland. But I remember that day. That day was agony. Just for us sitting watching it, I've no idea how that must have felt on the pitch.
Well, I think during the course of the game, as the game it was running away a little bit, and of course when we did miss a penalty, I thought, is that a for us sort of thing? But I mean, no sooner that had happened than they were up the park and they'd scored their second goal, and the rest history. But on top of that, there's only a couple of times in my whole career where I'd seen people get emotionally upset after a game of football at a professional level. And that was one of them. That was one of the games that, there's a lot of tears in that dressing room because it meant so much to everybody that was representing our country, that had the shirt on that day, but also the fact that there was so many of the Tartan Army had travelled down, and some hadn't gotten a ticket to get in to see the game, and they'd still. I mean, it was just a bit like, nearly 2 years ago now when Scotland played England with a reduced crowd in the Euros. Every 1,000 tickets available for that, but there's still loads of Tartan Army down there in London. They couldn't see the game, but they were there in body and spirit, but they couldn't just get into the game, sort of thing. So it was one of these games that, as I said earlier, that I hadn't seen the emotional side of that. I think one other game, and that was at Blackburn when we'd been beaten in a game. But other than that, it was a difficult one to take. It really, really was.
I know that we're going to talk about 25 years on from the World Cup, but that's really interesting what you're saying about Euro 96. And then, 3 years later, we went back to Wembley, and in typical Scotland fashion, 1999, we beat them, but still went out in the playoffs, if you remember. Well, obviously you remember because you were there, you played. What was that like? That's the ultimate bittersweet, isn't it? You're beating them on their own patch, played them off the pitch, and ultimately we still never qualified. Yeah, no,
it's a probably typical Scottish hard luck story, isn't it? Really, when you think about it, because we'd lost the game, I think, over the 2 legs at home with Scholes. I think he'd scored twice, and one of them was a set play where I was quite close to him, except that obviously I wasn't picking up Paul Scholes at set pieces. And then, of course, the return leg at Wembley on the Wednesday night, and I'd struggled through the back end of the first game at Hampden, and I didn't train at all. I couldn't do anything because my knee was so swollen. And after that game, and even if we'd gone extra time at Wembley, if we got a second goal, when Christian Daly had the header saved by Seaman, if we'd had that, if we'd gone to 2-2. I would have probably struggled through extra time. If I would probably have had to come off because I got operated on straight after that game. I mean, the cat wasn't very happy about that. But being a solid pro, and I've always given myself, that understanding that I've got to be available. It doesn't matter what. Even now, if I'm playing now and play I played 2 games in 3 days there, which was daft to me. But I'm here to tell the tale, sort of thing. I'm here on Tuesday morning recording this for you guys, so I'm all right. But I still give it 100%.
Was that a charity match is called?
Friday night. No, Friday night was a game. For the physio that I do a bit of coaching at Radcliffe. He's got a team, West Auckland, down at Witten Park in Blackburn, and then on Sunday it was the Clifton Casuals who Scotty Brown plays, Bruni played, Big Whits, Brian O'Neill. There's a few of us, but the teams that play against us, they know that we're playing anyway. So, but yeah, we love it. We love it. I mean, boys, just little boys, and just love it. Just can't get enough of it.
Bruni told us that he was playing in this, that him and Whits had joined an over 35s. He didn't say that you were in it. This is becoming more and more like something Davey and I need to go down and cover.
Yeah, well,
it's an all-star Scotland select.
Well, we're going to be reduced in numbers this Sunday because, for obvious reasons, because the 2 games are on. Half the lads are going down to Wembley, and I don't know. I know that Bruni and Whits aren't going to be there either. So I don't know if we're even going to have a team. But I mean, it's made up of ex-pros. David McNiven, Scott McNiven brothers. Their old man Dave, he played for Leeds. Jamie Milligan, he was at Blackpool and Everton. Gav McCann, Villa, Sunderland, Bolton, Everton as well as. So there's a load of us. But I mean, we don't all play at the same time in the same team because we're here, there, and everywhere. But that's been going for about 10 years in Lytham St Anne's at Lytham Cricket Ground. So the pitch is brilliant. The team that comes and plays us, they know that we're in the team, that they're up against us, sort of thing. There are sometimes it does get a wee bit tetchy. They do think they can, younger ones as they do. They think they can take on the more experienced ones, which is fine. I've not got a problem with that. As long as I can run, I'm okay. I can deal with everything else. But that's great fun. It really, really is good fun.
Please tell me you're top of the league.
Well, we lost a game about 4 weeks ago. We got beat 4-1, and I mean, I was at the back, and we didn't have anybody that day. I think there was Bruni wasn't there, Brian wasn't there. I think Brian was refereeing, he was injured. No Milligan, no McCann, no Whittaker, so no Scotty. So it was one of them. and sometimes they get it lucky as well, as depending on the team selection. Because the manager, who played for us as well, and he's younger than me. He's probably got more hair than me, though, and he's bald. He likes to think he's a proper Ten Hag. You know what I mean? He's a big Man United fan as well, that sort of thing. So yeah,
sounds like great fun. To be fair,
it's
anyway,
good. It's good.
Aye, good stuff. Right, let's go back 25 years, but before the campaign, before the actual World Cup in France in 1998, you had to get there. Scotland had to get there. And that was an incredible campaign. That was the campaign where Estonia never turned up for a game. You ended up, like, I think, is it John Collins celebrating after the 3 seconds when the referee blows?
Yeah.
So there's that. I don't think you played in that game.
I was
played
injured.
in that game. You know what I mean, though?
I was injured, and to be fair, when I spoke to Craig about it, he said, "Listen, Col, we should have enough. We should have enough to go there and beat Estonia." I mean, I think my first cap for Scotland was against Estonia. I think we won 3-0. Kev Gallagher had a couple of goals that day, his first couple of goals for Scotland. But then, of course, there was unfortunate turn of events that I think the Estonian FA decided that they were not going to turn up on the day, but we had to still attend. And I can remember it quite vividly, everybody walking out. So there's Scotland walking out on their own, and John's at the front. He was captain, be Johnny Collins for the day. And he's like, the national anthem got played, everything else. And then they go take the kick off. He takes it forward. The referee blows, and that's it. And they just walk off. It was the most surreal, ridiculous situation. And I mean, but I can remember the game having been, that game had to be played at some point, and it was played in Monaco.
Yeah.
And I played that. I played that game. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Big Duncan Ferguson, I think he played that game as well. And we drew 0-0. And Big Dunk got quite a bit of stick about that. He'd missed a couple of chances, but he didn't take too well to that, Big Duncan Ferguson. But that was mad. That was just one of them games, But we still made it. Still made through the group and everything else, which
absolutely
is always the difficult part.
I know, and Gary Mack was obviously the captain, but I think he got injured and couldn't go to the World Cup. At what point were you told or when did Craig tell you that he wanted you to be the captain?
Well, I'm not saying it was one of you two guys that rang me, but it was one of you guys, i.e., in the media world. I got a phone call. Gary had done his hamstring, I think, and he'd been out for about a month, so it was quite a tear. And he was on his way back, and he'd played for Coventry reserves in the December. And I got a phone call to say, "Have you heard about Gary McAllister's back?" And I took the call because I can't recall exactly who the reporter was. But I took the call and I said, "Yeah, I said that's great news for us," because Gary was as good a player that I played with all round. I go on record and say that the best player, and I've played with a Shearer and a Kocha and Yora Yokai, and I've played with loads of, there are too many to mention, to be fair, players I've played with. But Gary was probably the one that could do everything. And, he left Coventry to go to Liverpool and win a treble in Europe, and that just shows the quality of the guy. But he got injured on that game, and then I got lost a little bit in translation because I said, "Yeah, he's come back, he's getting fit, he's going to be ready for the World Cup." He said, No, he's got injured tonight. And I've gone, "What, injured in the game, coming back?" And they said, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, you're joking." He said, "No, and it's a bad one. We think it's his ACL. So he missed the World Cup, and you will be captain if you're number 2. And I'm like, right, well, I didn't know that. But then it came out. It wasn't something that Craig Brown's going to ring me and say, "Listen, Col, you're going to be captain in the World Cup." I think it was more or less because if Gary stepped or he was injured, I would step in. And if I was injured, then John Collins would step in. And that's how it worked. So it was more or less reading between the lines that if Gary wasn't going to make the World Cup, I was probably going to have that great honour of walking us out in Stade de Paris.
Sure.
What's your memories of that day, Colin? Because, again, Davey and I in the press box, the night before was carnage.
Yeah. It must have been terrible for you, lads.
It wasn't a good pre-match preparation, but we got there. I just remember the whole thing, the excitement levels, the fact it was us, the fact the whole eyes of the world were on us because of who we were playing in the first game. I mean, it was just as close to perfect. I also remember being terrified that the OG Ronaldo was going to absolutely, destroy us. And from memory, that didn't happen. I thought we dealt really well. You guys dealt really, really well with him for 90 minutes, which, it was again a bit of a sickener because here's this guy, the best player in the world. He did go on to destroy just about everybody else in that World Cup. He didn't do it to us, and yet we still end up in the end a stinker.
Ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, from start to finish, I mean, it was... I think as you get older, there's things keep coming back, and there has been some video footage of us in Stade de Remy de Provence, next to Avignon, where we stayed, and then we flew the day before up to Paris, stayed in the hotel that night, and I mean, we were on the coach heading to the stadium. Oh goodness me, probably about 4 or 5 hours prior to the game kicking off, around about 12 o'clock, because obviously with the opening game in the World Cup, there's all the razzmatazz, there's all the show before it, there's all the preparation. But we were there quite early, but even as early as we were, the streets, and by the time we got there, the stadium was practically full. And we were walking out maybe 2.5 hours, 3 hours before the game. And it wasn't a red hot day. I mean, it was warm. It was a nice day. It was, touching 70 degrees, but it wasn't a red hot sort of thing. And it was a later kickoff as well, if I remember. I think it was about 4 or 5 o'clock.
It was 5 o'clock, yeah.
A bit later in the day. So we gets there, and I mean, the masterstroke of it all initially was that between the players and the SFA was that we wear the kilts. So we were on our kilts walking out. And listen, see, you're on about Braveheart and all that stuff and Bannockburn and all. I mean, I thought, this is me. I'm right at the top. I'm right here, right at the front. Freedom and all that. It's like crazy, man. And it was, and you're taking on the world champion.
Getting the wood painted on the face.
Everything. It was mental. And you're about to play the world champions, eh? So. So Craig said to us, he said, listen, go out and acknowledge the Brazil fans and then go and see the Tartan Army and the families and spend a bit of time if you can. Obviously, they can't go on the pitch and we can't go off the pitch sort of thing. But it was pretty stout already. It was pretty busy. And of course, we acknowledged the Brazilian fans, and we're walking out and they're about, wow, look at these in the national dress. And they tried to get pictures and that with us, but we're not going to go and get pictures with the opposing fans just before we play the biggest game of our career sort of thing, But we gave them a wave of acknowledge. They acknowledged us sort of thing. And we went down seeing the Scotland fans, and I was picking out, my late wife Denise's parents, well, Davy had Callum, Kyle and Reagan. That's the two that we had at the time. So it was just a great atmosphere. And of course, there's no animosity, there's no hatred or no crowd trouble or nothing like that. It was just being part of probably the biggest viewed, and I think you guys might be able to correct me as well, it was the biggest viewed live sporting event at that time in '98, because it was the beginning of the internet, or in and around the internet coming out, so people could watch it on the old dial-up PC, probably about an hour behind. But
get the ZX Spectrum out.
Yeah. But that said, it was a very highly viewed match. I can remember that much. And then, of course, we goes out, does a bit, comes back in, gets ready, and of course you remember. I think on some of the footage, as we're walking out, I'm leading, of course, then Jim Layton's behind me and Tommy Boy's behind him. And Colin Calderwood, he goes the other way. I think he comes out and goes the other way. So he runs away from the tunnel and is that excited and that pumped up. But as I'm walking out, I mean, this is the tale that I always tell everybody. As I'm walking out, Craig and Alex coming past me, and they're saying, "Skipper, you all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm great. I'm good." They said, "Well, just have a quick look behind you. Just have a look." So I've looked behind me, and just coming out of the Brazil dressing room, you've got Dunga, the captain, then Taffarel, the goalie, Roberto Carlos, the full back. Then you've got Rivaldo, then Bebeto, then Romario, he can't get a game, then Ronaldo. And I've looked back to Craig and I've gone, "What?" He said, "Have you seen their eyes?" I said, "No." He says, "They're fucking shiting themselves." and I'm like, see here, and that was Craig. That was Craig. He was just absolutely nailed on with everything that he did and everything that he said. And I'm like, I've just heard the best quote of all quotes, and I'm about to play the world champions in the biggest game of my life here.
Did
the lads, yeah. Well, I think he thought he was trying to calm us down, or he was trying to make us no feel as if that there wasn't such a gulf between them and us, sort of thing.
You were gate crashing their party.
Well, yeah, more or less.
Craig once told me that the tactics that day were to prevent Cafu, the right back, for feeding Ronaldo, because that's where a lot of their goals came from. So they're basically trying to cut off Ronaldo at source. And see, when you think about it, and what Keith said earlier on, Ronaldo didn't have a massive impact on the game. So, your game plan worked, but losing a goal in the first 5 minutes, say a corner, must have been an absolute sickener.
Yeah, I think where it fell down for me, especially as a defender anyway, was that in the manner that we conceded the 2 goals. Because if we were playing the world champions, say, and they have, throughout the course of the game, they've got like 20% possession because they are the world champions, we're only little Scotland attending. And they maybe keep the ball for, 12, 15 passes, and then Ronaldo or Bebeto or Rivaldo decides to ping one off his right peg into the top left, Jim's left-hand corner for 30 yards. Then you turn around and you go, you know what, that's well done, that's why you're world champions. But no, we concede for a corner kick after, was it 4 or 5 minutes? And then the most ridiculous own goal that I've ever been involved in. Because although it hits Tommy, and as soon as it bounces, it spins away from me because I'm about to clear it, and it was over in a flash. But it was one of them that
over in a flash, but it was like slow motion, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. You think you're in control of it, Dave, and then as it bounced, I'm thinking, oh, I'm not going to get it, and it's like, and it's great, it's going to go in, and it's in before you know it. It's in before you know it. But talking about Ronaldo, I mean, he had the one chance in the first half where he's gone down the right-hand side and he's taken me out of my little comfort zone with the lines of the 18-yard box, and he's got me down the side, and it must have came from Cafu, it must have came down from that, well, it did come from that side, and he's turned me, and then I think Tommy came across, but I've had to commit the biggest sin in defending. I turned my back on my opponent for the first time in probably so many years, but it was the best in the world at the time, Ronaldo. So, and in order for me to get back round quick enough, I had to turn my back, and he had his shot, he had his strike, and it went past Jim's right hand post, I think. And I think, to be fair, that was the one and only real threat that he gave us on the day. I think he linked up a couple of times outside the box, but no, we did all right against him. We did okay, but it was just the manner and how we lost the game. A corner kick and an own goal. It was disappointing.
Tell me this though, Colin, from a defender's point of view, because you're right. The guys at the other end of the pitch get all the adoration, adulation for their moments. I can only imagine what that must have been like as a central defender up against the greatest player in the world of that time. The concentration levels, that must have been exhausting. That's all I can think about. For 90 minutes, you've said it there, you made one mistake where he's got round the wrong side, you've had to turn your back on him. You're still 25 years later kicking yourself for it. So that would say to me that for the rest of that 90 minutes, you were absolutely, the three of you at the back were absolutely on it. hardly a mistake made, and that must require, as I said, exhausting levels of concentration.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all the preparation that we had, and I think we'd gone to America, we played the USA and we played Colombia like we did in '96. We went over there, we played two goodish sides. I mean, the US would do Ronaldo in Washington, I think, before we came back, and Colombia we played, I think, that might be in the Orange Bowl. I'm not quite sure if I got that correct, but and the preparation was to play against, obviously, a team from that part of the world in Colombia, and I know America I think it was the first time in the World Cup, '98, but to play a Colombian team that was similar, and it was all, again, that was the work that Craig was thinking about, preparation for us, especially defender. I mean, don't get us wrong, lads. I mean, we were always going to be under a bit of pressure, because we were probably the minnows of the group. I mean, because the Norwegians always fancied themselves. You're playing the world champions, and Morocco were probably thinking as well as there was between them and Norway to go through, because little old Scotland will not give us a problem, sort of thing. But the concentration levels was all about it at international level anyway. This is where we're on the back foot for most games, apart from some of the qualifiers that would play against the likes of going back to the Estonias, the Latvias, Lithuanias, the San Marinos, the Faroe Islands, that we had a lot of these games in both qualifications, the Euros and the '98 and Euro 2000 as well as. So there was a lot of these sort of games where we'd have the upper hand, but then when the bigger boys came involved and we were expected to get beat, your concentration levels kicked in, especially from a defensive point of view, to the ultimate, because that's what we had to be in order to give ourselves a chance or a platform to build off of.
Tell me this then, Colin. At the end of that game, did you rate Ronaldo after it? Because, and I don't mean that as being facetious, but I think you've probably had tougher games against tougher opponents. You must have walked off that part thinking, Ronaldo, I'm not sure he's the big deal here.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the lads at Radcliffe that I'm coaching with, the boys, they love coming in early, because I'm always in early. I'm always the first in and probably last away. But anyway, they're like, Ronaldo. They've asked me a lot about Ronaldo. So was he? And I'm like, well, yeah, he did. But I mean, I think at the time as well, as there was a rumour that he might have been injured, and Nike insisted that he didn't play, or the Brazilian FA said he had to play, or what. There was a quandary at the time as to if he should play or if he shouldn't play, or because he was injured or whatever. But that said, he played. So I mean, I've played so many times, 70%, 60%, 70% fit, 80% fit. So we all do that sort of thing. But I mean, I've played against Thierry Henry. I've played against so many players of world class footballers I've played against, and he showed flashes in the game where I thought, and I was probably at my peak. I was right at my peak in my game. I'm thinking, wow, he did the little things, the turn of pace, because although I was never ever the quickest, and I always said that, I always read the game. I never ever lost races. I could never ever be seen as to losing a race, because I'd always read the situation quickly enough. But there was a couple of times within the game when I played against against Brazil, I'm thinking, he's probably got a bit more to give, but I don't know if he can give it, or if he's running out of space, or if I've closed off that angle or that avenue for him, that he's got to change his direction, which is always good, because that means they've got to take a touch, or they've got to change it. There's going to be an element of losing a bit of time on that when you change direction. So there's all these little different things that you think about, and especially when if you've got the three as well as with the two that can go and commit themselves, and there's always the coverage at the back, which was me, sort of thing. So, but yeah, no, it's fantastic, phenomenal footballer, and you can understand why being regarded as the greatest, as one of the greatest, because that discussion will go on and on forever with the likes of losing Pele recently, and and Maradona and Messi and Ronaldo Siren sort of thing. You know, it's a great discussion.
Absolutely, aye. Just very quickly move on to.
No, because this is. But I wasn't pissed off, but I got drug tested. The drug test right on the pitch. 5, you're coming with me. I'm like, what? No, you're coming with me. Off you come, son. I'm like, you're having a laugh. So John got his shot. But I was a bit fortunate as well, as because I was going from Mizuno. I was contracted to Mizuno, and I'd signed a deal with Nike, and Nike had given me a load of shirts to take with me because they sponsor Brazil. So there's about 4 blue and 4 gold Brazil shirts to take to get signed from the game. So we had a couple of lads that came along with us, like the little boot boys to look after, that helped Hughie Allen, the kit man, during the course of the time we were in the World Cup, which must have been a great experience for them. And I got them to get the shirts signed for me. So I've got a signed shirt. I've got, and then in time as well, I've given them all away more or less, that for charity and stuff. But I had to hand some back to Nike because that was part of the deal. And I think I kept about 4 to myself, but I think there's about 3 of them. I've got one left. I know that much, and that's signed. Signed by Ronaldo, Rivaldo, Bebeto, and Roberto Carlos. So I've still got a from the game. Yeah, well, if you put me in as well, absolutely. I could play in the goal as well, so it doesn't matter.
It's not bad, aye. Just moving on quite quickly then to like game 2, Bordeaux. You know, from memory again that day, you know, we were the far the better team. Ended up with a draw when it should have been the 3 points, shouldn't it? Yeah,
it should have been. I mean, I think we were. I can't recall if we were doing one. I think we were doing one all at half time. I think we were.
They scored first, and then Burley scored.
And as soon as that goal went in, if you've lost the first game, which we had, you're right under pressure. You're under real severe pressure because you're thinking if it stays, we're going home. And of course, Craig's comes in at half time, and he really did have a go. He really did have a go at to a lot of us, and we weren't squabbling between each other, but we were quite vociferous within the dressing room and digging people out, and people were having to go at defenders, people were having to go at midfielders having to go at strikers, and so there's a load of different things going on. But I remember Craig coming in, he says, and he'd forgotten, I think England had played the day before down in Marseille, I think it was. I can't recall who they'd beaten the day before. But he just come back to England and he said, if you think we're going home before then, you have another thing coming. I'm like, I'm sure. Which to be fair, if we'd lost the game, we were going home. We were going home because, you know, nobody can come from a point of 2 defeats. You know, even if you win the last game by a landslide, the reality of it all is that there'd be somebody else that the other 2 teams would probably go through. I mean, we were the better side. And you know, there's a lot made, I think, before the game as well as from the Norwegian coach about the game. I think there was a bit of flack in Daily Record. I think it was the Wally and the Wellies. Craig Burley had said, the Wally and the Wellies, and Egil Olsen, And listen, the Scandinavians are no shy. You know, when it comes to football, especially, I don't think they're very shy. Well, certainly Norwegians aren't they? That's for sure.
No, that's right. Then, well, obviously the last game, and probably the Tartan Army and all that. You're thinking, well, that's the one that you know. I know that Morocco, in hindsight, were a really, really good side, but that was the one where everybody thought, well, we'll win that and we can still get through. But as you said, disaster. Craig gets sent off, didn't he? Craig Burley gets sent off. 3-0. That must have been horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, it was. It was because I don't think we were complacent in any way. I just think that there was probably too many players off on the night. Again, we weren't really sure what we were going to go in against, like the Brazil game, from an experience point of view, because African teams I'd never played against an African side, or that part of the world, if you will. And even with the experience of playing against Colombia, before we played Brazil, that helped us. The Norwegian game, that was a stereotypical European qualifier type game where you'd be involved in quite a bit, but it was a bit nip and tuck as to who was the better side. But the last game, and it was a disaster I think it started with Craig Burley's bleached hair. I think that's where it all started to go wrong.
Did he steal your shampoo?
Well, I wish I had that shampoo these days, I can tell you. But no, Craig, lost the head as well as, didn't he? So, and I mean, it was a strange. I mean, well, it was very bittersweet. Because, well, I wouldn't say bittersweet. It was definitely bitter because we go there and we don't put a show on in Tottenham and St Etienne. You know, I think it's not the most attractive of places to go and attend a game of football. But I think Morocco actually thought they were going through. You know, I mean, Norway had beaten Brazil. You know, Brazil lost twice that tournament, the final, and that game against Norway. So that was a shock. That was a turn up, and
that I was actually at that game to cover the Norway-Brazil game that night when the other lads were obviously covering your game. And all I could think of in the last, because Norway scored twice in the last 3 minutes to beat them. And all I was thinking was, and obviously I knew Scotland were out 3-0 and blah, 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 but I was thinking, what a way for Scotland to have gone out. If Scotland had beat Morocco, because Norway had beaten Brazil, we'd still have gone out. And that was going through my head that night, that would have been so typical for Scotland. But actually, Morocco got to feel what it was like to be Scottish. Talk about a glorious failure.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot during the game as well as. So I went on to play with Mustafa Hadji and I forget the name of the other player. It was at Coventry City. Later on, but I ended up playing with them, but that night, on that night as well as, there was a lot of verbals between them and us, sort of thing, you know. And it wasn't really a game of. There wasn't any hatred or nothing in the game. There's nothing between us as far as history because we never played each other. But just there was a lot of that. There's a lot of that given it, and so right at the end of the game, when we got told, by the way, Norway's beat Brazil. You can imagine what the boys are saying to the Moroccans, like, "Hey, get it up, you." And it was only about right because they were giving it all that during the game. You know, 2-0, 3-0. We're doing it 10 men. We're never coming back from that. And there's a lot of verbals, and I'm thinking, you know, because they're broken English. Us Scottish, we don't speak any other languages. They were apart from Johnny Collins, he's only one. But we understood what they meant. So we were quite happy to give them a wee bit back right at the end of the game because they were in tears as well as. So what goes around comes around, you know.
I meant to ask you, Colin, when you were talking about Gascoigne's goal at Wembley, did you have an exchange with him afterwards? I mean, obviously, your teammates, this set of circumstances comes about. It's his golden moment. You said it. You've saved his England career.
Yeah.
Did he say anything to you after? What was said after that game? You must have wanted to wring his throat.
I swapped shirts with Alan Shearer. But before I'd gone to Euro 96, the headline of the Lancashire Evening Telegraph was Alan had said, "I'll bring the medal home to show Colin," or words to that. I think the headline would still, you guys would still be able to get hold of that headline somewhere along the line, 96. And of course, that didn't happen, which I was glad about. But I seen Gazza a few years later. It was early 2000. We were playing a game up at Newcastle, or I was playing a charity game called The Match. It was on Sky One. So it was ex-players against a load of different actors and stuff. It was a sellout. It was about 40,000 on at the game, and we won. I think we won 1-0 or 2-0. I can't recall. But Gazza was there, and my late wife Denise had been ill and made a recovery at that point. And he Gazza being Gazza and readily gets easily upset. You know, he was sat with us at dinner and obviously had a few drinks, a lot of drinks, and then he got a wee bit emotional with Denise, sort of thing, and it was touching, it was nice. But no, I've come across him a few times, but I've not recently. And he probably wouldn't have managed that goal now anyway if he comes down to Lytham on a Sunday. He'd probably get. I wouldn't be messing about with him.
I mean, I get it. He's not going to apologise for it. Why would you? But at the same time,
absolutely.
At the same time, he'll have known how much that hurt for our guys.
Yeah, it did hurt. I mean, as I said, there's only 2 games, and that was one of the games that I've seen grown men cry after a game, and throughout the game itself, I think, you know, and I don't think Gary's. I mean, people have a go at me about the goal. People, you know, if depending on the situation, the circumstances, socially out late at night, do a function, people's in a drink. Oh, guys, it's your fault. I still get that. You know, I still get that was a chance. Pardon?
From Scottish guys?
Yeah. But I mean, I then left Blackburn in '98 to go and sign for Rangers, so it could have been one of each side. I don't know. But that said, Gary took a bit of criticism as well as for the penalty, you know, and so I share that sort of understanding of it's been difficult, and it is difficult, you know, still to this day. People, my generation, our generation, they all remember it, you know. But I mean, the one thing I say to people is that as far as the goal, etc., it's taken England's greatest ever footballer to do that to me. So then I throw that discussion back to the people that's talking about it, and they go, I said, well, give me a better English footballer that technically gifted. You're looking at Bobby Charlton, you're looking at, I don't know. Not
many. Anyway.
I don't know. There's not many. Glenn Hoddle, you know. So there's not to do that, but you know, that stereotypical Paul Gascoigne. He had that ability, and you know, when you look at all the different forums and stuff about choosing and voting for, you know, he's right up there. Those guys are.
See to move that on, Colin. How tough was it for you to end the Scotland career the way it ended with Nicola Albani? You scored 2 goals that night, but it's remembered obviously for being sent off in the last minute, 6-match ban, and you never played for your country again. How, looking back on that, how tough a time was that?
Well, you've got 2 things there wrong, Dave.
Oh,
I didn't get sent off.
Did you not?
I didn't.
Wow.
I didn't
I was at the game as well.
No. I didn't get sent off. I didn't get sent off. No, I completed the game.
Wow. Well, that's
and then retrospectively, they looked at it, and they gave me a 3-match ban.
Right.
So Craig says, and I'll go through what happened when I'll finish this wee bit. So Craig says to me, he says, right, Col, we're going to appeal that because of what you're telling us and the footage that we've got, and we'll get it quashed. So they appealed it, and the appeal failed, and I got a 6-match ban, and that was it. That was curtains. That was curtains for me. I did have aspirations to try and get back and play for my country. I didn't want to end there, but then again, I scored a half volley with my right foot, a half volley with my left foot. And I mean, I only scored 3 goals for my country. So them 2 goals, and I had a header against Malta. So I had the perfect trio of goals in my career, international career sort of thing. But no, what happened that was I was up for every corner, because at half time, Craig had said to me, he said, listen, I think Dennis Law was the last person to score a hat-trick, and that was in 70 or 60 or whatever it was. He said, let's make, create a bit of history, try and get the hat-trick, big man. He said, and, for what you've done for us, and you deserve something. And I'm like, right, well, I'll up at every set piece. And of course, I'm at the corner kick, and I'm getting marked from behind. And as per usual, he's all over me, which I get. I've not got a problem with any of that. And then he started nipping my back. So he's nipping, and I'm thinking, that's fine, that's okay, I've not got a problem with the nip. But what I'll do is with my elbow, I'll just give him a dig in the ribs. That's what I'll do. And so that the more he nips, the harder I'll dig his ribs. Unbeknown to me, he's behind me, and I've not really told this story, and certainly not on camera. He's behind me, and I've gone forward. As I've gone forward, he was leaning on me, so he's ended up going down forwards a little bit. So at that moment, I've took my elbow and I've hit him bang square in the jaw. But I do not see what I'm doing because I'm facing the ball. So he's behind me. I catch him on the dish. He collapses like he's been shot, gets carried off on the stretcher, waving to the fans as he's getting carried off. I think he's up seeing Mons Meg at Edinburgh Castle the day after, courtesy of one of the tabloids in Scotland. And I'm the worst man in the world because I've tried to protect myself at a corner kick. But that story is no really ever came out because I've not had a chance, certainly not on camera. But that's what happened. That's what happened. But
tell us this, Colin. You mentioned that he's nipping you.
Yeah.
Now you're vastly experienced. You've played against some of the best strikers in the world. You've been in these. Davey and I are a couple of laymen. We're sitting watching all this from a press box, so we've got no idea how much of a common occurrence was something like that. Some guy nipping you. Or, that's what I was wondering.
But no, it wasn't. It was never. I mean, the top players don't do that. The top players don't do that because all they do is get in your head with the movement and scoring goals and making sure that they get between you and the ball. If you look back at the records of San Marino, the amount of sending offs, yellow cards, free kicks they give away, that tells you. That tells you. And since then as well as, that tells you they play one way and one way only. They play the dirtiest, and that's their only way. Because they're so poor, they're that bad. That's the way they have to play. So that I don't have to say, I don't have to give that reason to you guys to explain that. It's if you read the stats, it tells you there already. So it's not as if it's an opinion. It's in black and white.
Oh, yellow and red.
Yellow and red. But 6 matches, yeah. And then when Bertie Vogts took over, I thought I'd get a call for Bertie. I thought, I'm back playing at Bolton and everyone else is back playing. And I never even got a letter to thank me for my services. I'm thinking, here we go. No, I never even got a call for Bertie. But
see, at that time as well, Colin, there was a lot of
bullet you dodged, Colin. Unfortunately, we had to deal with Bertie. You missed that one. It was a good call.
Yeah, I know.
Just to wrap up on that whole incident. Now, there was talk at the time that the Procurator Fiscal had contacted Police Scotland to see if they wanted to do anything about that. I mean, what was going through your head at that point that the people were actually looking to do you for that?
Yeah. Well, I was pretty much unblemished in my career. I can't talk about everything, my whole life as such, because everybody's got something that they wish they'd never done in their life and everything else. But I was a pretty solid professional. I think the Gascoigne goal, I could have done something about it. If I take him out, I get sent off. I miss the last game against Switzerland. That wasn't really I wasn't like that. If you go into different parts of, well, certainly South America, even Spain or Italy, if it was a Spanish or an Italian defender, they probably took Gazza out and took the red card and waited for the next opportunity to play. That wasn't me. So it wasn't like I was going to, I was a solid pro. And I found that strange. But I did get the call. I got the call because Craig said, I was even reported in the press. The CPS are looking into an incident at Hampden Park on such and such a night. I'm like, really? I'm thinking, wow. People aren't, some parts of, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's the media, it's not the media, just some parts of life. It doesn't matter how well you do, there's always somebody there trying to bring you down,
Well, just as well it's not today, this day and age, because that would be a 30-year stretch you'd be looking at.
Well,
the way things have gone today.
Well, it's not. Well, I don't even know, because VAR is so badly used, and you guys, I know in Scotland it's just come in and people are complaining. Well, we've had it down here, and we've still got it down here in England, and it's like it goes back to the naked eye, the human eye. It's back to a human decision in relation. So it's not actually the VAR and the equipment and everything that we're using. It's again back to
subjective.
So yeah, it's simple as that, So, but I think if it was available back in that day, they would have seen. Wow, hold on a minute, he can't be doing that to him. And all I've done is, responded. Wrongly, I may say, but I didn't do it deliberately, because I have no got eyes in the back of my head, so it's not as if I intended it.
See, by the time we'll move this on for the Scotland thing just very quickly, Colin. But by that time, you had already played at Rangers. You'd had your 2 years at Rangers, I think, 1998 to 2000, I think. What was that like playing for Advocate and winning the treble, particularly as Rangers bounced back from the disappointment of the previous year where they lost the 10 in a row chance, and obviously Dick came in and you'd won the treble in your first year. What was that like?
Well, I mean, there was something that it was icing on the cake for me. I mean, there's not a chance was I able to try and work out the fact that A, was going to win a treble for Rangers, and B, win the league at Parkhead. So for that point of view, I mean, it's absolutely perfect. And I wouldn't have changed any part of my career whatsoever. Probably the only thing would to maybe deal with Gazza's goal a bit better. Other than that, because that gets spoken about so much since. But I would never change anything apart. Winning the Premiership with Blackburn, winning the treble with Rangers, and I thought it'd actually gone. I thought that opportunity had gone, because I think 2 years prior to that, Rangers had made an inquiry, but then the David Murray had said that they weren't going to sign any players over the age of 30 for more than $1 million. And then there was a massive change. Walter left and the Advocate took over, and there's an influx of phenomenal world-class players, world-class footballers coming in. And then I got the call, and I thought, right, I've got to go in for $3 million at my age as well. As I'm thinking, well, it's an opportunity. And it wasn't the fact that I was going to Rangers, just that was the fact that as a family we were going back to Scotland. I mean, majority of my career, apart from my early days at Dundee, had all been in England. And the family so young and everything else, and it was a great opportunity to go back in Champions League football as well as to play in Europe, because that was few and far between at Blackburn, because we weren't. It was a town team winning the Premiership. There wasn't layers and layers of heritage in relation to doing well domestically and playing in Europe regularly, sort of thing. So that was the downside of playing at Blackburn at the time, because we weren't used to that European football.
That's a life-changing event, I can only imagine, Colin, because I've been to Blackburn, I know what the place is like. I know that, I mean, I'm sure that you couldn't walk down the high street in Blackburn without getting recognised, but I think you take things to a whole new level. I mean, you were perfectly comfortable down there, perfectly used to, everybody knows you, but it's different. Up here's different. You've stepped into a goldfish bowl and you're wearing a tartan suit. You're recognisable. in this mad part of the world. How difficult was that to transition into?
That was difficult. That was the hardest part, I think. It wasn't so much the football. Although I'd signed at the back end of the World Cup and I didn't really have a break. And at my age as well, as at 33, I probably needed a good break that summer, but I didn't get it. So I went straight into pre-season, and then I had groin problems, which was more or less on the back of not having a break. and the body telling you, listen, you're breaking down. You need to get that repaired. So I did my bit for that season as well as, but I didn't really get into a good run of games where I got back into myself on a domestic key. It was the injuries that hampered me more than anything else at Rangers. I enjoyed myself playing with such great footballers, and Dick tried to sign me, I think, back in 93 or 94 when he was at Eindhoven. He'd made an inquiry. Yeah, Dick had, and that was where there was a couple of German sides, there was a couple of Italian sides, as well as when I was at Blackburn. They were like, right, yeah. And Jack Walker said to me, he said, listen, you're not going anywhere. You're here for we just got in the Premiership a couple of years. I think it was about 93 or 94. And he said, you're going places at the minute. And I said, right, I'm happy. I'm fine. Look after me. And he did. But no, Dick tried to sign me prior to that.
That's interesting. So that was where,
I
tell you why that's
because a lot of people
thought it was a David Murray signing.
Yeah,
that was the accusation, wasn't it? This is David Murray's ego. He wants to buy the captain of Scotland.
There's a lot of Scottish players had left, and you just wanted to put back in a bit of Scottishness into the side. And what better than the Scottish captain from the World Cup? It's just finished. So that was that, but it was Dick that wanted to sign me as well as it. And I mean, I know I was late in signing because I missed the 2-3 things that was promised. Was like, well, you're going to be captain. Well, I didn't sign in time, so they didn't name a captain before they played Hearts an opening game at Tynecastle. So Lorenzo got the captaincy, and then said, you're going to be number 5. Well, in Holland, the number 5's the left back, so that's Arthur Newman's.
That's right.
And then before you know it, but I wasn't bothered. It didn't bother me anything about these things, but it's just little stories and little things. So a lot of people do think it was David Murray signing, but it wasn't. It was actually Dick. Dick wanted to sign me, tried to sign me before, but he probably got me just a bit late as far as the injuries is concerned. Because at 33, you've got to be absolutely on the ball. You've got to be right at it for most of the time, because you'd get found out. And it wasn't so much either coming to Scotland and being involved in, which I described playing in England in the Premiership, a boxing match every week. That game never ever took place apart from when you played in Old Firm or you played in Europe. That was it. Maybe a couple of key games, Aberdeen away, could get a bit naughty and you look after yourself. But physically wasn't a problem. It was psychological. It was mentally. That was where your games were won when you played for Rangers. Certainly at the time that I played, and I would have said there's a lot of players, ex-players, could say the same because of the size of the club.
And off the pitch, Colin, the family settling into this absolute madhouse up here, having been used to, being across the border and living a nice, quiet life. Thank you very much. Yeah,
it was a massive change. Because my late wife Denise, her dad Davey was a massive Celtic fan, and Denise, they'd all grown up as Celtic supporters, and it was, Davey used to come and look after the kids in the players' lounge at Ibrox after he'd come to the games and not particularly enjoy them, but enjoyed seeing the kids, the grandkids after the game, sort of thing, But we were back home, back home in Scotland, and living in a lovely part of the world, the Bridge of Allen, and it was good. It was great, and yeah, no, I would never change any part of my career. Certainly not my achievements anyway in relation to that. And it's probably it is the perfect treble. I mean, I don't talk a lot about it because a lot of people might think you're trying to open up the avenues between Rangers and Celtic and everyone else. I just quietly, and especially on social media, if you take a few hits on social media, on Twitter, for example, where it's pretty much open Twitter, I just let them remind them. But I don't have to go overboard on it. And it's a nice treble. Perfect treble.
We talk about great players that you come up against, and I think one of them did give you a bit of trouble, to be fair. Henrik Larsson at that point is out of this world, wasn't he?
Henrik, yeah. I mean, I think he scored against. Well, we got beat 5. We took, was it 5-1 Scott Wilson gets sent off. We visited Parkhead that season.
That's when he goes through and lobs Stefan Kloss.
Yeah, Stefan, I think, and then Lubo Moravchik, I think, had a hat trick. I think he scored a hat trick that night. And then he did score, and I think it was a 2-2 at Ibrox as well as. But yeah, again, I mean, and then he goes on to play for Manchester United and Barcelona. So that tells you because down here in England, people do question the Scottish game, Rangers and Celtic. And I've often had to defend, and often do I say, and there was a Goodby story. My next door neighbour in Livingston Arms, massive Manchester United supporter. He's a season ticket holder, but his best mate's a Liverpool season ticket holder. So about 3 seasons just prior to COVID, he'd gone been invited to the game at Anfield, Liverpool Man United. So he's half time in the game, he's ringing me. And he worked in the oil out at Aberdeen for long enough, Steve, and he's like, I'm like, what's he ringing me for? It's a Wednesday night, it's half time in the game or whatever. So I eventually pick up the phone and said, where are you? What are you doing? I thought he maybe had a few beers or whatever. And he said, Colin, at Anfield. I'm at Anfield. He said, I'm at Liverpool Man United. He says, you're right. The biggest game in Britain is in Scotland. I said, I know, I've told you that. Rangers Celtic, that's the biggest game. And he said, but I tell you, I've just been told by 3 other guys as well, and they're all Sirs. I said, who's that? He said, Sir Alex Ferguson, Sir Kenny Dalglish, and Sir Rod Stewart. And I'm like, well, there you go.
Absolutely.
I'm telling everybody. So you get into that sort of discussion down here, and it's difficult because you've got the Arsenal supporters who are coming back out the woodwork a wee bit now. You've got the Chelsea supporters who you can't see them for anything at the minute. Liverpool fans, Man City fans, Man United fans coming back out as well, and they're all like, "No, I'm not so sure." But it's to try to defend the clubs it's not difficult. It's just trying to put people into perspective as to what they could be if they would be playing against the like in England. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, so at that point, you've done it pretty much all. The Scotland career. I mean, I'm guessing that's something that you could see it in the way that you played, Colin, the immense pride that you had in that. Winning the title at Blackburn is a fairy tale story, as you describe it. The perfect treble at Rangers. Obviously, the incident happens at Hampden, which kind of brings the curtain down on the Scotland thing. At that point, Colin, I think you know your own body. It's telling you it's time to maybe take a step back. You can't go on this ride forever. An interesting thing has happened up here over the last couple of weeks, whereby there's a debate about are footballers being properly prepared for what comes when it's time to hang up their boots. I did a column with Barry Ferguson last week where he was saying exactly this, that our young kids aren't properly prepared for life after football, and perhaps they need to be better educated for what lies in store for them. I mean, there's been some terrible stories that have come out over the last couple of weeks about guys that are having a real rough time after football. Do you have sympathy there, Colin? I mean, obviously, your life after football was touched by all sorts of tragedy, but even just standard across the board, are we doing enough for guys? Do you have any idea when you've been living in the front line all that time what's coming next?
No, you don't. No, you don't really. I mean, and to be fair, I wasn't a stereotypical footballer going into coming out of football into coaching or managing or business. I was a carer. I had to look after Denise. I was her full-time carer for a bit, and things in as well as that, coming out is the worst thing to happen to us as a family. There was other things involved as well as part of my private life, drinking, gambling, the whole thing, that. And for people or players present day, I don't think they do realise, but there are different companies and different organisations trying to make an impact in relation to trying to explain how things can quickly unfurl and how whatever you've built up as a professional footballer, wealth-wise, for example, can quickly disintegrate within a flash if you don't have a little bit of understanding of what comes next. And I've been approached. I do a lot of speaking. I do a lot of different types of talking. And I do touch on the fact that, what I'd gone through and how it affected me, affected my family, which is the most important thing, and how you bounce back and you recreate, you rediscover yourself. But for these footballers not to make the mistakes in the first place. Mm-hmm. And that's the key, really, because it affects everybody so differently. You don't really know what's going through anyone's head in relation to their private life or what they're trying to do day in, day out. But you can only try and make them aware of, look out for the warning signs, look out for this, look out for that. But everybody's different. Mm-hmm. There's not a standard way of dealing with anything or trying to make it an awareness, because people will interpret it differently anyway.
Am I right in saying, Colin, that the one thing that ties everybody together and makes it similar, whereas you're right, everybody's their own individual person, but the thing that ties the football thing together is, well, for 20, 30 years, you guys have been told from the age of God knows what, all that matters in life is going out there and winning on Saturday. That is your be-all and end-all. That's your sole sense of purpose from the age of 12, 13, 14, all the way through your mid-30s. Yeah. Suddenly not having that to go for at the weekend, I think that's what it if there is a problem, I think it might be something to do with that. This is the one thing that you guys have been told is the be-all and end-all.
Listen, Keith, I'm 57, right? The day comes that I can't run about, that'll hit me hard, because the physical side will definitely it'll tell me, the body will tell me I can still do 5k 3 times a week. I still play every weekend, albeit for 80 minutes over a 35s game of football. If I don't get it, then I'll go on the bike or I'll go for a run or I'll do something different. If I can't do that, and there's a lot of ex-players that can't do that because of injuries that they've had. They've now got chronic injuries. They've all different issues in their life. I've been there and had that sort of thing, and then I've rediscovered myself and hardly ever drink. I keep fit. I tried to do the right things just to give myself a chance. So there is going to be a time for a lot of footballers who are going to go, is that me being told, is this what's going to be like for the rest of my life? And what's the important things in life as well as? And as I said, and I know you touched on that, everybody's different and everything is different, but it's the interpretation, I think, that players will understand this when they come out of football, that the life does completely change, because you don't have that every weekend. Sort of thing.
It's a sense of routine as well. It's the routine. Barry Ferguson was saying he has to find a thing, whether it's getting the leaf blower out the back garden or going shopping just to the supermarket. Just build some routine back into your life, because I think football players go from very rigid, regimented routine on a daily basis to nothing, and just a big void. Is that part of it?
Well, that's true. That's what happens. But I will now probably go for a run. I mean, I played 2 days ago, but I'll probably go for a run. I'll feel better after that. I won't go to the gym today. I might go to the gym tomorrow. And I've got loads of other things going on. I mean, I'm coaching at Radcliffe, who are 3 tiers below the Football League here in England. We're third in the league. We're in the playoff position. We've got 12 games left. The manager will be ringing me straight after this, because I'll put my phone off airplane mode on it, so he'll be able to get through. He'll be like, "What have you been doing for the last hour?" sort of thing. We need a player for Saturday. We're at Guiseley away, and it's another big game for us. And there's big game. Well, you've got Rangers Celtic on Sunday. You've got Man United Newcastle Sunday. There's loads of things going on. So I keep myself occupied. The thing about it is that I'm lucky in respect of being able to keep fit. So, I mean, I should have been going with the boys next week to Dubai, but I can't because I'm obviously coaching here. So you've got the Rangers, the Scotland, England legends. Derek White's organised it. So there'll be Frank McAvenny, Brian O'Neill, there'll be Charlie Miller. You know, I don't know if Coistie's going out. So that's on. I'll miss that weekend in Dubai with the boys, which would have been great for me. But there's loads of things. You've got to keep yourself occupied. But I don't know if, I mean, don't get me wrong, Keith. I mean, some of the monies that's been banded about in football, then if it's been organised properly for them, then they shouldn't have. And as much, your health's the most important thing. You know, I mean, that I can obviously I know that firsthand. Your health's the most important thing, and then it's your wealth, because that makes things a lot easier and better for you in life. And the one thing is health, wealth, and time. You know, I mean, when you start younger, you've got loads of time. You don't have a lot of wealth, but you've got your health. And then you hit the middle stage. Time's beginning to run out a wee bit. You've built up a decent bit of wealth, and you've got good health. And then the third stage is you've got a bit more time because you're coming out the other side. You've built up great wealth, but your health might be struggling. So that's the three, that's the three things. But for me, obviously, it's health and health only, to start with. I
just want to ask you, Colin, just to round up this whole thing. It's been a fascinating hour, and we thank you for your time. But I would suspect, and I hope I'm not putting words into your mouth, that your greatest achievement is when you look at your three kids who have been through so much, and you also, at the end of your football career, as you said, you ended up becoming a full-time carer for your wife,
Denise. Yeah.
And we've spoken to Callum. Well, what a top young lad he is, who's making his own way in football now. You must be enormously proud of how your kids have handled everything that life's thrown at them. Yeah,
most certainly. Well, Callum and Neve were 9 and 11 when we lost Denise, sort of thing. So that itself, I've been fortunate. My mum's still great. She's 84 last week. I'll see her hopefully next week. I lost my father 14 years ago, and then and Denise the year after. But the kids have been remarkable. And you're touching on Callum. I mean, Callum was 11 when he lost his mum, and then at 15 he did his ACL, was cruciate in the playground at school, and then he did it again at 17 on the same knee, did it twice, and he's bounced back. He's bounced back. He's one of these never say die, never say die, never say die, and he's got his rewards for working hard through the period where he doesn't have a mum, and B, he's took the hardest hits in sport, more or less, and he's bounced back and he's making a career out of it, sort of thing. But the kids, to every one of them. I might add as well, Dave, that I've got 4, no 3.
So I apologise.
No, you're all right. You're all right. I was going to. Little Nevie, she lives in the south of France. She's down in the south of France, so she's all right. She's okay anyway. But the kids have been remarkable. They've done great, and their mother was, it's the most important person to children. Everybody more or less knows that, the mums, and I'm lucky I've still got my mum. And she's good, and she keeps me in track and keeps telling me, what to do and everything else, even at the age of 84. So, but it's not been easy, but at the same time, they've made me very, very proud.
Absolutely.
Colin, thank you.
Colin, I think that's the best place to leave it. Thank you so much for your time. And we will hopefully speak to you soon. Just one more thing. I will do. Callum, was Callum born in Scotland or England?
Born in England.
Born in England, right?
Born in
Blackburn. Right. So if he turned around and said to you,
he's already had this, and it was blown out of proportion on Twitter. Aye.
Right. Okay. So what happened?
Because everybody that's English has said, as if we're really worried about you playing for Scotland. And he's like, that's okay. But it was a loaded question. He got asked earlier this season at Salford. You know, he said, and he's like, is that a real question? And then, of course, as soon as he gives the answer, not that he needed to give the answer, but as soon as he gives the answer, you've got all these trolls coming on and giving, oh yeah, we're really bothered about Callum Hendry deciding to play for Scotland instead of England, sort of thing. But I'd love him to get a cap. Oh yeah. I'd love him to get a cap. But he's doing all right. He's okay. He's at Salford at the minute, and he's they're in the playoff position, so he's doing okay.
Yeah.
He's hanging in.
Good stuff. Colin, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, mate. And keep in touch.
Good. Keep in touch, lads. All the best.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot.